Welcome back to session 3 of Reducing Burnout and Restoring Empathy. If you've been following along in the series, we're talking about burnout and causes and kind of the connection to the work that many of the frontline folks are doing during this state of emergency and how it impacts not only your work life, but your home life and all those pieces in between. Thank you for the emails. It's interesting getting emails. Yes, I do have a big poop emoji that's a stuffed caricature sitting on my desk at times. And there was some comments about the amount of stuff I did have on my desk. I just want to address that because I think it's kind of interesting that that's what people picked up. When we're doing grief work, when we're doing, especially around sudden death or suicide bereavement, some of the experiences around those deaths that our clients deal with can be really, really hard heavy. And it's always good to have something that someone can be distracted by for a few minutes when things are getting tough, when things are getting hard, because I think it softens the emotion, it softens the harder edges around some of the traumatic events around the loss of someone. So yes, I have rocks that have positive statements. We have little caricatures of different things that have been given to me over the years, and they truly are to distract sometimes when people are feeling really heavy with the work they're doing. And so we might have some of that as we move on to some of the more difficult conversations. We have some amazing folks coming in to talk about their stories, and you'll see some of those techniques used because it gives grace and it holds space for people to fill it with their own experience in a way that feels safe with them. So that's why there's a lot of things in my office at times, because it makes my role a lot easier when I'm working in the frontline capacity with clients. And it helps me not have burnout. So I think hopefully that is kind of those wonderful comments, and I don't know where you can get that stuffy that I had here. That was a gift from staff. And the wonderful thing about the poop emoji is that it smells like chocolate. I don't even want to go in any farther to that, but there's a little bit of comedy relief before we get into some of the reasons for burnout in this session. So today this session is going to focus on burnout causes, and we're going to spend a little bit of time really diving into some of the things we think frontline folks might be experiencing about the increased volume of workload, how heavy the work is, and trying to lift up some of our clients that are really struggling with their addiction pieces, and as well as some of the grief of those clients that haven't been saved in the past few months. And those are all pieces that connect to lead to burnout, to compassion fatigue, feeling overwhelmed. All are intertwined and connected. And we're going to pull those apart so you can maybe see what's sitting hard in your work that's impacting you. Originally, the term burnout was only applied to the workplace. However, as people are formally doing research into this, into burnout, we're finding that psychologists, psychotherapists are now including burnout as a general term for any prolonged stressful conditions, and that includes both work and home. There are studies out there that are showing that women make up the majority of those that say that they're dealing with burnout. And again, I don't think that's surprising in many ways. Women still traditionally tend to be the caretakers in whatever role they are in terms of family and workplace situations. And we also know we have, as mentioned before, a lot more people dealing with not only workplace stress, but dealing with children at home and aging out family members. So there's a lot on people's plate. And when you take normal work and then compound it by extraordinary work, you start to get some of the causes that leads you to feeling empty, hopeless, that you just don't want to do the job anymore. So I think I've just led us nicely into what burnout causes can come from. First and foremost, it's unmanageable workloads. And I'm going to say unmanageable workloads and life loads when you think about it collectively. When you put all of that on your shoulders, it presses down and it really gets to be hard. I think sometimes it's like swimming in dark syrup, thick syrup. You can't get through it with ease. And that's what happens, I think, when burnout starts to hit for many people, is they can't go about their day-to-day with lightness. It becomes heavy. So I think we watch for that when the workloads become unmanageable, when things at home become more complex and demanding. Sometimes we have confusion around work responsibilities, especially in times when things change so rapidly. And I think we've seen that for a lot of frontline staff in our community organizations in the last few months because of the growing crisis around opiates and death that have surrounded the Bridge Street Hub, but also other places that our clients are congregating. We know that we have people in the camps. We know that people are living in social housing. We know that there are people in the workplace that are using, and that has become a stressor. The different work responsibilities on how to handle this caseload and how it evolves and changes without sometimes the procedure pieces catching up. It can lead to a lot of confusion and it can lead to a lot of frustration. And that adds on to about deadlines and pressures. We know that for any of our funding that we're trying to keep a hold of data and stats, and yet things are so busy, it's hard to make a tick in a box when you're being pulled in this way to maybe help manage someone's overdose. When do you Narcan? Are you trying to call paramedics? All of those pieces, and you forget some of the little minutia that's attached to your role for possible funding or that has to be reported out at the end of the day. So that leads into having too much work and not enough downtime. I know we all talk about self-care. Anyone that's talking about compassion fatigue, talking about burnout, we always come around to the word self-care. But it is so important that maybe it's not so much the self-care piece, but that you're checking in with yourself and you know what your capacity is, and you know how much capacity you have when you walk in the door at the end of the day. Can you deal with walking the dog? Can you deal with helping with a child's homework? Can you help your husband in the wood shop to finish flower boxes? What is the capacity you have at the end of the day for your personal life? And then in the next day, it's coming in the morning and wondering, what capacity do you have for those competing priorities in your job? And it's when we move further along into session 6 and 7, we talk about some specific tools, and some of it is list making or prioritizing. If this is the day to do the hard thing, this is what you do. But it all leads back to that there's too much work and not enough time to rest. And work doesn't always mean workplace. When you feel like you have too much work, it can feel like you're out of control. That nowhere do you feel competent, nowhere in your world do you feel that you've got all the ducks in a row. And that leads to that frustration, and that leads to that disengagement, and can help with those feelings of burnout or that you're just done. Because you never know what's being completed, or you never know what's coming in the door or what the phone call will be. And then when you go home, you don't know how someone's going to be feeling, or you don't know what needs to be done in terms of a repair because your roof is still leaking, or all of those life things all come together, and it just feels like you have no control. And that can also help with the workplace and home life feeling really demanding. I think it was Barack Obama who said he always knew what he was going to wear, and it was always pretty strictly navy blues because he didn't have to make decisions. And when you have decision fatigue, which can happen, some of those things that are simple really help with starting your day or finishing your day, because it's one less decision you have to make. You just don't have the capacity for one more choice or one more piece to be decided on. I was talking about this to a group of folks a couple of years ago, and somebody brought up his day of brown suit. I have no explanation for why the brown suit happened, only I know that it made headlines around the world. I can't even imagine how wearing a brown suit would make news, but it did. Sometimes we're bored. Sometimes burnout comes from actual boredom, and you just kind of get done. There's a routine, nothing changes, and so you find yourself disengaging, because if you haven't got anything that's challenging you, if everything is always rigid and status quo, and you can't envision or be creative or, make choices applied to your work in a different way each day, it can feel that you're just disconnected. On the other side of that, people take on too much. Sometimes people get into the mix of it and they want to make a change, and they know they have capacity, and they know that they can help out in this crisis, but there's another crisis over here, and they know they can help out here, but it's okay, I can still do this and help out here, but something's happening over here that I have the expertise for, I can go over there and help. And all of a sudden you're just stretched like a rubber band, and something has to give. And usually if you're one of the people that are helping, you don't ask for help yourself. So it becomes this double-edged sword. So we see that as a cause of burnout or leading to burnout. And then lack of sleep. Good old lack of sleep. Whenever we're working with clients, for the most part, we always talk about, are you eating and are you sleeping? But sleep deprivation truly has psychological as well as physical changes to our bodies and to our minds. And if you're not sleeping and it's going on over 2 weeks, it's time to talk with someone about what's interfering with your sleep. Is it because racing mind, you have so much to do at work, you're so overwhelmed, you can't shut it off? Is it other things? We know that chemical changes in our body, too much caffeine, not enough, all of that leads to where we're not getting the sleep hygiene that we're supposed to, that helps us function. The other thing that happens when we start to move into a more burnout phase of our life is that we stop connecting with the supportive or the meaningful people in our world. And that's where you have to check in too. If everything else isn't resonating with you, but if you say, I've stopped doing X, Y, or Z with this special person or with my partner or with this group of friends, do that self-check-in, because that could be a sign that you're disengaging and that you just don't have the capacity or the energy to kind of nurture these special relationships, because it does take time. It does take energy. I suspect for many people that have been working frontline during this last few months with the crises that we've had, is probably go home, put your pajamas on, have a cup of tea, and look at TikTok. It happens. You don't have capacity to give out more when your cup is kind of running out. So it is, again, that check-in. If you're seeing yourself pulling away from the people that mean a lot to you, it's time to really look at maybe some tools and a chance to kind of refill that cup. We've talked about the causes of burnout, and we've explored them from the lens that many of you that are watching these videos might be working through some of these reasons for burnout and are experiencing those causes. So that's why we've kind of done that as kind of the groundwork, and we have left many out. I know I'll get emails from some of you more diligent folks telling me there's other reasons, and absolutely there is. But we wanted to really stick to some of the things that we suspect many frontline staff are experiencing, whether it's with EMS, the John Howard Society, the Enrichment Center, the CHC, whoever's watching these videos at this time. But now I think it leads in nicely to about the signs of burnout and understanding that it's a gradual wearing down. It doesn't just happen overnight that you wake up and you go, oh, burnout. This is what I'm experiencing. That's going to look really weird on the video, but we're going to leave it in. Sorry. Like I said, burnout is gradual layering of pressure and stressors from your job or personal life. Signs, symptoms, however you want to identify, can be very, very subtle. You don't always pick them up. Sometimes the people around you are going like, oh, what's up? And they may know that you're heading to a burnout before you do. The other thing is always trying to be aware that burnout and stress mimic each other. And so you have to be very cognizant of yourself, of what's coming, what is actually the chicken or the egg situation. Is it stress or is it burnout? And to understand the differences between them. Some of the things you can look at for yourself or for your colleagues around you is exhaustion. And it's not like I just had one bad night's sleep. It's that chronic exhaustion and fatigue that you feel drained, and you're not able emotionally to deal with the problems around you, that just seems there is no energy. I know for myself, when I have 2 or 3 nights of lack of sleep, I can present very teary. That's not burnout, it truly is exhaustion. But if I don't manage that, if I don't take something off my plate or maybe have a self-care day, that could lead into a burnout or a stress-related injury in the workplace, because I'm just simply not getting the rest I need. And that chronic fatigue builds and builds and builds, and you just can't get on top of it. Again, it's coming back to being well rested is very vital to your survival in the frontline field. And again, we have to pay attention to people who are dealing with exhaustion on a chronic basis. It leaves you without energy, and it just leaves you without enthusiasm when you're constantly feeling exhausted. And we also know that chronic exhaustion, when it's moving into that, when it's been more than a few weeks, can lead to physical pain and stomach problems. So if somebody's really tired and they're complaining of an upset tummy all the time, it's time to do a check-in with them, whether you're a manager, whether you're an executive director, whether you're a fellow staff person. Check in with someone who is showing some of these signs. We talked about exhaustion, or about people stepping away from other people, alienating yourself. That is another sign to look at. If you take part in volleyball every Tuesday night, or you've been involved with curling for years and years and years, and it's your passion, and all of a sudden you are too busy to take part in something, or you just don't have the energy, or it's like you find something negative about something that you used to love doing outside of your work, that was an activity that, you know, was part of your self-care regime. Pay attention to that. You start to distance yourself from things that you enjoy because you just feel numb from all the stuff in your life. And that leads to reduced performance in the workplace, or at home. You know, you have no energy left to either perform your duties at work, or you don't have any energy left to perform your duties at home. And by duties, I don't mean the 50s wife kind of thing. I'm talking about, you know, there are things that we do each night when we go home that are part of what we are in terms of the contract with being with our family. So, you know, our rule in our home is first home cooks and last home cleans. And if I'm not fulfilling my role of cleaning up when I come home late, then that's part of that reduced performance in my home life. And if I'm dealing with burnout, sometimes the reduced performance is I don't want to come to meetings, or I find excuses not to come in for the day. So those are things to kind of take a look at and pay attention to. If there's reduced engagement in the workplace, if that's reducing engagement in the home, and how you manage your day-to-day. Something that's a little bit more insidious and a little bit more heartbreaking when you start to see in someone that you care about in the workplace or in your home is the mental health burnout that you see, the self-doubt, helplessness, negativity, failure. People listen to those affirmations in their head that are telling them they're having a good day or they're doing a good job. But those affirmations that we do in our self-talk can be very negative, and they start to encroach on the confidence that we have in what we do. It starts to encroach in how we feel the relationships are. And it can make us very vulnerable to hurt feelings. So it's really some of those things to kind of take care of, seeing how somebody's responding to something that might not have thrown them 6 months ago, but now it's become overwhelming and they feel helpless and they don't see a way out of dealing with this situation, and it becomes self-fulfilling in terms of defeat and failure. And I think that's, for myself, that's the hardest thing to watch in a staff person that you know that do amazing work, but you start to hear them do that self-doubt or that put themselves down, and that inner voice or that inner critic is being really harsh at this time. And that's really hard to watch someone become cynical, disengaged from their employment or their colleagues, and dissatisfied with the work that they had a passion for just a few months ago. We'll talk about that. I think we have some good speakers to address that very thing, about how to re-engage a positive inner voice, because I think that's foundational. Please don't email me. I am not making a research call on this. I am just thinking, we know that self-affirmation, positive messaging, internal, helps us deal with our day-to-day lives. That's just common sense in the work that we do. So what we've heard in all of this becomes this big puddle of physical and emotional burnout symptoms. It becomes a whole pile if it goes on long enough. Greatly fatigued, without any energy for anything, whether it's in the workplace or at home. You get sick often. You catch every flu, every cold, and you have body aches and reoccurring headaches. One of the things we watch for is those reoccurring headaches that happen around 2 p.m. in the afternoon in the workplace, because that's sending a signal for us to really take care of ourselves, because they're chronic. It just impacts us. It's that weariness, or it's just, I've been trying so hard to hold it together for this work day, and you no longer can do it. So for managers that are watching this, watch for the headaches, for someone rubbing your temple around 2 or 3 in the afternoon. It's a good chance to see how their workload is and how they're engaged in it. Some people lose their appetites, and there's a big change in eating patterns and eating behaviors. So watch for that for yourself. Something that you enjoyed eating is no longer holding joy. I think a big sign for me, if I no longer could have coffee or wasn't interested in coffee, then we'd have something to really talk about. And I come back to sleeping. Not getting enough sleep, not sleeping at night, is really impacting the trajectory of your physical burnout symptoms. And again, pay attention. Don't fluff it off. Don't try and catnap or think that 20 minutes after work will restore the rest cycle that you need. Really pay attention to your sleep. Fitbits are wonderful. Any type of electronic gizmo that you wear constantly, and that can monitor your sleep patterns. Look at it. Are you really resting at night? Is there REM? We sometimes don't know how we're sleeping. we know we've had a poor night's sleep, but we can't quite quantify it. And right now, if you've got any type of smart device on your wrist, use it, take a look at it, and see what's going on when you're not aware of what's going on. I'm just going to close in saying that burnout doesn't happen overnight. Burnout takes time. We're not responding to the idea of burnout right now because of the events that happened mid-February. We're responding to the events that happened from August on, and there were times in the last 6 to 8 months where we have had real spikes in the need for the community to respond to the most vulnerable who are dealing with the tainted drug supply, with the overwhelming challenges of trying to find people housing, to try and find them employment, to move forward to life stabilization that might help them move them through the addiction patterns. It's an accumulative burden of care for the whole community. I will say that the roots of this isn't the immediate response to what happened in February. It's understanding that February was a tipping point. And so we need to address some of that accumulation of stuff that everyone's carrying so that you can continue doing the work that everyone does in such an amazing way. Shout out to, look at me knowing the lingo. I'm going to hit the subscribe button here soon. A shout out to the folks from Ontario Works who are writing and talking to me about this. We forget sometimes that people that might be second degree of separation from the acute frontline work still are impacted by names on files, by not getting a call from a client that they know very well, from someone that they've seen through a historical piece while their time in the agency. And so I think we need to reflect. We think that the frontline burnout is all the intensive, hands-on, direct care modalities, but it actually extends back to those that work with people behind the desks, ensuring that people get their financial needs met, that they're being connected to making sure that they're doing the reporting they need to do to ensure their financial means continue. And we neglect those folks sometimes. And so I just want to say thank you for watching, and I absolutely understand what it's like to see a name come across the file that you know is now deceased, and it hurts and you grieve. And I think it's really remarkable of the compassion that you all seem to have for the clients that you serve. And that's just something that is just simply amazing to me. So keep doing your good work. And we'll be moving on to session 4 next week. And I believe we're going to have some folks sitting and talking with me, so it's not just my voice you're going to hear. I just want to thank you all for watching, and I hope that you're getting something out of it. I especially want to thank Alex French, who is behind the camera and is helping me navigate this new thing that we are doing in terms of trying to provide outreach to folks in the community. It's a lot of fun. I've also discovered it's not as easy as it looks, and a lot of how I look good depends on what Alex is doing behind the scenes, and I really appreciate how hard he is working on this to make it happen. Have a wonderful week, and I look forward to talking to you in about 7 days' time. Thank you.